Both Senator Cory Gardner and Representative Ken Buck announced this week that they do not support the current draft of the Affordable Care Act reform effort. Each cited the need for more time to develop the plan and avoid major cuts to the Medicaid program. Patty, right from the start, now we've heard from other critics nationally, but Colorado with two pretty vocal critics, do you think the criticism we've heard from both Senator Gardner and Representative Buck will last?
Well, I think we're going to hear more from them and probably more from many other senators and representatives. You know, this was just finalized and introduced Monday night, and since then, the amount of arm twisting and, back patting and everything that's going on, I'll be surprised if by the time this show airs, people haven't been sent off to the hospital to take advantage of their special congressional medical care, because we are looking at a proposal right now that could shut out between 16 million and 20 million Americans. No one who's running for re-election in 2 years, or arguably anyone who's humanitarian, would want that to happen. So there's some really significant problems to the bill as it currently exists, and it is morphing even as we sit here, but Rachel Maddow was already giving the people who protested Cory Gardner's non-appearances at town halls credit for changing his vote. On the other hand, Ken Buck did go to town halls, and both of them were able to find problems with this bill as it currently exists.
David, we've seen congressional Republicans handle this in a couple different ways. One, there seems to be a lot of pressure to get as much done right now. When we need 8 years to do this, to repeal Obamacare, we've got to move right now. What's the plan? But then it seems that there are more questions coming up, and one of the major criticisms of Obamacare was that it was passed before people could read it. So it's like, maybe we should actually analyze this. If you were advising congressional Republicans, should they take their time and really hash everything out, or is it more important to get some action, even if it's just a piece of it, sooner than later?
Well, it's never important to rush just for the sake of doing something to say you've done something, because then you often end up doing something stupid. On this particular thing, this Medicaid expansion is not financially sustainable. As Chief Justice Roberts wrote in his opinion in this case, it was Medicaid used to be for people who were indigent or disabled for some reason, and this was a huge expansion to able-bodied adults. The federal deficit shows this can't go on. We can't even pay for the the pre-Obamacare welfare state that exists, let alone this huge thing. So something's got to change. The proposal in states like Colorado, where you had an irresponsible chief executive unilaterally do this whole expansion, gigantic expansion of the state government without even asking the legislature, the proposal winds it down by saying the people who are on Medicaid now, we're not going to kick you off, but we're going to be increasingly limiting about new Medicaid enrollments, and I think that's a reasonable phase out.
Eric, it seems to me that process can be as important as the details. And I think when we look back at 2010, some of the criticisms came out of not only the details of Obamacare, but how it came to be, the process. What are the important lessons for Republicans to learn from that as they go through the process right now, whether it's town halls or change the law? What do they need to remember about the process?
Thanks for that setup, Dominic, because that's exactly where I was going. I think one takeaway from the passage of Obamacare in 2010 is the dangers of having only one party invested in it. It was at the time the first major entitlement that was passed without any remote spirit of bipartisanship. We're now seeing the exact inverse of that, and we're seeing the same dangers. Now, maybe it's just a symptom of the polarized country we're living in, that's the way things are, and that's the way things will be, and you couldn't get a Republican to participate in Obamacare, and you can't find a Democrat to participate in its repeal and revision, et cetera. But there was danger in that, and Democrats paid a very, very hefty political price for it over several election cycles, and I'd suggest there's danger in this as well. I find Cory Gardner and Ken Buck to be an interesting duo on this one. Ken Buck has been a Trump loyalist once Trump became the apparent nominee and sits on as safe a Republican district as you can find. So he has really nothing at stake here. So obviously he has some concerns about the practicality of this. Cory Gardner, fortunately for him, is not up for election in 2018, so he's not feeling the immediate heat. Yes, he represents a purple to slightly bluer state, and a re-election is then starting to loom in 2020. Gardner's become who has been not a never Trumper, but pretty close to it, and very slow to embrace this president, has become an interesting figure not only on this issue, but on other issues in Washington. I don't think any of us know what the resolution of this is going to be. David is right about rushing these things and the dangers of excessive partisanship. We see it time and time again, and neither party really seems to learn that lesson.
Ben, let's look at the political ramifications for Gardner. If he's come out now as a critic, but eventually some changes happen to the bill, and then he eventually votes for it, does he lose the credit for being an early critic, or can he ride that balance beam in the years ahead as I was a critic and a supporter?
Well, I think if there's one Colorado Politico that has shown he is able to actually be on both sides of an issue literally at the same time and make claims that say, yes, I am, and no, I'm not, depending on what day of the week and what audience, it's Cory Gardner. So I suspect that if there is a successful triangulation strategy there, that he will find it. I think he's banking on people continuing to be frustrated and, frankly, continuing to be very comfortable with his affect and his $1 million smile. So I do think that what you're seeing from Gardner is some concern and finding ways to both support the administration with some of their economic policies and stand up and say no, so that I think he can point to collaboration and a voice of dissent as he goes into re-election, probably starting in 19.